E eu estou muito curioso para saber assim, o que te surpreendeu? Porque você falou, você conversou com centenas de pessoas até chegar com esse número. O que te surpreendeu? E principalmente, o que você aprendeu?
Well, I did have a few surprises because I really wanted to I wanted to hear about these narratives that people had created over their lives and whether they were sustaining or not. One big surprise was that the faith narrative, the religion narrative, was not as sturdy as I assumed it was going to be. There's a wonderful quote of that Irish actor who opens the film with Dylan Thomas's poem, Gabriel Byrne. He said something to this effect. He said, we're all afraid of annihilation and aging. And while we can profess great faith, and he's an Irish Catholic, he said, deep, deep down, I believe that we are all doubting Thomases at the end. And I did find in the process of having these hundreds of conversations, and with a few exceptions, the near-death people, which I can talk about later, the religious narratives were not the primary ones. And I had intimations of this when I made my film about 9/11, and I interviewed so many people who'd either escaped the burning towers or who had loved ones who hadn't escaped. But I also listened to so many of the tapes from people who were dying and locked in the towers, and they would leave these messages on their answering services. And I was struck by how few messages related to God. It was mainly the narrative of love, tell Emmy I loved her, tell my ex-husband I forgive him. Those were, there were only 4 or 5 calls that I listened in on that spoke directly to God and an assurance of an afterlife or being welcomed into that. That was one very big surprise. The other one was that the audience for this film was not primarily, as I expected, baby boomers like myself, people who are of a certain age. These questions are pressing in on them. I found youngsters just flooding into the theaters or into the forums where this film was being presented all across the country. And I sensed that the film, therefore, was really tapping into something that was happening within the culture and expressed by younger people who were craving a more honest and candid discussion about death and dying. And they were there. And you can see that in these, I don't know whether South America has what Europe has and America has, death salons and death cafes all across. And they're mainly fueled by people and organized by youngsters in their 30s primarily, late 20s and 30s. And that was a really big surprise. And then just finally the last, it was a small surprise, but I thought the art narrative, I talked to so many artists and I assumed that I was going to hear more about the solace from them of creating something, spending their lives creating a book, a painting, a body of work, that was going to give them more pleasure as they face their end than it did.